Well, good morning and welcome to our council meeting. I'm sure the crowds are a little small this morning because everyone's out voting. And just a little reminder that there is an election going on. We'll call the meeting to order and we will have an invocation, and following that Pledge of Allegiance. I don't see Pastor DeShazer here. And if Pastor hasn't made it in, we're always nice to have standby Charlie Davidson to provide us an invocation. Charlie, you ready?
Yes.
At a moment's notice, you're ready.
Right.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. All right, good morning. Welcome on this Election Tuesday. If we could bow our heads if we have a word of prayer this morning. God, I thank you for today. I thank you for your wisdom that you impart on these leaders, these community members. Lord, I pray especially for our city council, our mayor, Lord, that they would just incite you for wisdom and guidance. And the Bible tells us that from many advisors come wisdom. And Lord, I pray these advisors, these department directors, that you continue to impart upon them wisdom to lead such a great city. Lord, I thank you for this time that we have to gather today in this council meeting, and community members that come and be part of this meeting. Lord, help us just to make your business our business. And Lord, as we continue to strive to make this a great city, an all-American city, God, that you continue to impart upon us the wisdom that we need to do so, and that we can meet the needs of our community members and all our departments. Pray and ask all this, and we lift this up to you in Jesus' precious and holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charlie, and just another reason why you're everyone's favorite. We have the minutes of the July 23rd meeting. Any changes or corrections in those meeting minutes? Seeing none, I move that we approve July 23rd, 2019 meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. And Madam Clerk, it looks like we're ready for you to call, I think, the consent.
Yes. Consent agenda items 1 through 22.
Are there any items need to be pulled for clarification or discussion? Seeing none, I move we approve consent agenda items 1 through 22.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. And again, passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Report of the Board of Bids and Contracts dated August 5th, 2019, and second quarter 2019 infrastructure formal bids.
We have a special guest this morning.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Melinda Walker, Purchasing Manager. First bid we have for engineering is Chateau to serve Cedar Creek Addition, Pareto Construction at $443,239.75. We have a water distribution service to serve Cedar Creek Addition Phase 1 for $97,950 to McCullough Excavation. We have water distribution to serve Village Charter's 3rd Edition, No Walk Construction, for $767,844. Southwest Sewer, 735, improvements, Popular Avenue and Green Street, all bids rejected. Mount Vernon Bike Lanes, Conspect, for $477,000. 2019 Arterial Sidewalk and Wheelchair Ramp Program, Conspec, for $397,652. Install of water utility service lines, Dutton Construction, for $363,000. Salt storage building deferral to August 12th. Publication of legal notices, Wichita Eagle, This is a contract, it's .60 per line for the public notices. We have grinding tree debris at Brooks landfill. Element, this is a person that came forward with Public Works staff, and Public Works revised and did new specifications. It's a zero. They are not charging the city. Our current provider was charging us about $200,000, so it's a $200,000 savings. This was publicly advertised and out for competitive bid for full and open competition. So Public Works staff worked and they did new specifications, and it's a zero bid, no charge. They want to pick up and grind the waste at the C&D landfill. So I just wanted to make a comment of a savings for the city and for Public Works staff putting that together. So, and it also saves space at the landfill. So, and that's the Board of Bids.
Any other questions, concerns?
Mayor, you had asked a question about a contractor that's on the, do you want some information on that
I
from
would
staff?
love to have more information.
Okay. I'm sorry, you would like it?
Yes.
Yes. Gary?
Well, good morning, Mayor and Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The Cedar Creek Addition paving project, the low bidder was Prado Construction. That was a contractor we had not seen before as a prime contractor on that type of work. We spent the last week and a half checking references, and they had a considerable number of references, both through work they had done with the Kansas Department of Transportation, and primarily we reached out to other contractors that they had done subcontractor work to. Everyone we talked to said they had done quality work. They were able to meet their schedule. This will be a project that's a little bigger than they're used to, but their primary specialty is concrete work and grading. This is not a large subdivision project. We think it's something they can handle. They do have the asphalt paving work subcontracted out to a local contractor who does a significant amount of work for us on projects across the city. We see no reason to not allow them to move forward as a low bidder to build the project. Our construction staff oversees all of these projects from a management and inspection perspective. Obviously, we'll keep a close eye on things. We have advised them that there's a very specific schedule within the contract that the developer is expecting to be met. Any issues with that certainly could impact them in the future, but we recommend moving forward with that contractor, and we think we can make it work based on those reference checks.
So you said this isn't a very large project, but yet it's much bigger than anything they've ever done before.
And maybe it's not much bigger. They have never been a prime contractor that we've been able to tell on a project quite of this nature. They have done work of this size, but as a subcontractor previously. So that's probably the biggest difference. Our experience in working with contractors over the years is they don't necessarily get tripped up there, but it's just a different challenge in being the prime contractor and making sure everything stays on schedule. The subs that they have to help them through the project, I think, are a real benefit to be able to make that work.
Do you ever list the subs? Who's the subs?
Their asphalt paving sub is APAC, who does a lot of work, especially for KDOT, but has done a lot of work for us across the city for a long time. And that's, that ends up being the primary bulk of the work is the asphalt paving. So that really helps things out in our mind.
Okay. Is there a time delay if we pulled this one? I mean, what is the urgency to get this one going? I mean, we know that, and I don't want to get into it all here, but we know APAC has had some issues before also.
APAC had an issue on one particular project for us, yes. I would say in the grand scheme of things and the work that we've done with them over the years, they're a good quality contractor. And they, particularly on subdivision work like this, we've never had any issues with them. The only thing at this point, if this award is delayed, is going to be whether or not the developer's schedule can be met.
Whose district is this in?
This is in District 2.
Okay. I suppose if you haven't heard anything, then.
I haven't heard anything.
All right. Very good. Appreciate it. Anyone have any concerns? If there's no concerns, I move that we approve the awards.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
2020 Annual Operating Budget and 2019-2028 Capital Improvement Program.
Morning, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing on our operating budget and the capital improvement program. Just a reminder, these are the four elements or factors that went into preparing our budget. Obviously, alignment to our mission. Engagement was extremely important to you and to the staff. Striving for service excellence, which is expected from our residents. And then, of course, position ourselves so that what we do for the next 2 years keeps us sustainable into the future. Reminder of what we did for engagement. This year we added the budget simulator. I won't go and repeat the results from that, but again, the good news is we had over 1,400 people that participated in that process. We went to the district advisory boards, plus we had a social media town hall once again, had over 80,000 views, and as you can see, 700 comments. By the way, those comments helped to shape the recommended budget, and I think what we've brought to you is reflective of the priorities as indicated through that engagement process. These are the pie charts for the entire operating budget, which is about $624 million. On the left, you see the revenues that support the budget, and charges for services represent the largest category because, again, for this budget, a significant portion of our expenses are for the utilities. And then when you look at how we spend those dollars, salaries and benefits continue to be the largest category. Here's a breakdown for the capital improvement program, $2.4 billion over a 10-year period. Again, significant revenue and expenditures for the water and sewer utilities. And you'll see in terms of revenue, we have special assessment revenue, we have GEO at large, and a lot of that supports our arterials, our bridges, and our freeway projects. A few years ago, you asked us to do a better job of coordinating the capital improvement program with the operating budget, giving the council some flexibility when you look at how our property tax revenues are to be spent. And we've worked on that. CIP, long-term infrastructure improvements, operating budget, your annual expenses for service delivery. Probably one of the most important takeaways from the recommended CIP and operating budget is an increase in expenditures for roadway maintenance. We've talked about that year in and year out being extremely important to our residents. And the blue line shows what you approved last year, which again was an aggressive acceleration of expenses compared to where we were back 10 years ago. But this capital improvement program seeks to build on that and to increase the expenditures up to over $130 million over a 10-year period. Some of the other linkages between the capital improvement program and the operating budget include our aquatics program, where we'll be making improvements to our pools and constructing splash pads in 2019 and 2020, and then we'll be staffing those and expanding our hours of service for those facilities during that period of time. Operating budget provides funds for that. Same thing with the branch library, $5.3 million to improve the 6 branches. Consistent with the strategic plan for the branch libraries, and then we have operating budgets in order to be able to support those 6 branches. I will note that the operating budgets have, at this point, are not impacted significantly by these expansions. We're not looking at increasing in staff. It's more refocusing of the staff in more strategic areas and initiatives. Public safety, a number of moving pieces here in public safety. In the CIP, we have funds for 3 fire station projects, 4 substation projects, and plus equipment purchases. We also are putting additional funds aside for our fire operations to make sure we have adequate funding for our 24/7 operation. And then we have a police and fire initiative teaming with ComCare and the Integrated Care team. Our operating budget also shows funding for the police staffing, first phase of the police staffing study, and we're moving 7 positions that are grant funded into the general fund at the expiration of the grant. Funding for the arts, we have a recommendation, which we've discussed with you previously, and I know is being discussed by the district advisory boards now, of 1.5% of our budgeted local funding to be set aside for arts. On top of that, there's approximately $1 million a year that would be supporting amenities for our street projects, which would include special street lighting, brick crosswalks, medians, and some other features such as those. We also worked with our stakeholders and are rolling out new operating plans for Cowtown and City Arts. Good news is that all of this is being done with the recommendation of a stable mill levy rate, same as what you approved in the adopted 2019 budget. Here is a 10-year picture of our general fund reserves. And when you look at the left-hand side, a reminder, this is our recession period. Our reserves were thin. We had very little ability to draw from any reserves and keep consistent with the council policy. So those first 4 or 5 years on that chart were very difficult for the city financially. Fortunately, because of actions the council has taken, we have been able to slowly build that reserve to the point where in 2018 we finished the year slightly under 15% of expenditures and slightly under $35 million in general fund reserve. Council also has adopted a number of benchmarks to govern the capital improvement program expenditures, and this is the chart that we spend the most time looking at, and it's our debt service, our GO at-large debt service as a percentage of our property tax revenues. And you can see that we stay under the council's benchmark throughout the entire CIP period. As we look forward to the future, as we set the stage with this budget, continue to work on process improvements. As I indicated to you previously, we have over $1 million in savings from work that staff has done in the last 18 months on process improvements, and we're hoping to be able to take care of the structural deficit that's anticipated in 2021 through continuous improvement efforts on the part of the staff. Also, we are focusing our resources, I think, on our top priorities, and I talked about that, street maintenance, as well as public safety, helping to shape this budget. Third bullet point really goes back to the process improvement and the use of innovation in the organization. And of course, because of the concern about the potential for a future recession at the national level, we are trying to maintain adequate reserves to assist us through what could be some difficult times. Again, we're pointing towards sustainability of our operations, that being the most important part of the budget. Here's the calendar. We have been through the first 2 activities. We'll point out that MAPC has found the CIP to be consistent with the Community Investments Plan, which is required before you can adopt it. The City Council today, of course, you're reviewing the budget here at a public hearing, and then final adoption is next week, August 13th. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you have regarding the budget.
Any questions at this stage? Councilmember Clendenin?
Bob, thanks. I just want that. I think one of the most important charts on there that you showed was our reserve level. Yeah. But I get questions about that all the time. Look at all the money you have in reserves. Could you just quickly give the benefits of having a reserve level at 15% and why it's important?
From a financial standpoint, first of all, you have to have enough money to be able to meet all of your operating expenses throughout the entire year without borrowing, and that's there are some cities that unfortunately have to issue warrants until they receive their property tax payments. We are not in that position, so we don't borrow for operations. And then Moody's and Standard & Poor's, of course, look real closely at our reserve levels. Back when we were in the recession, 2010, 2011, Moody's did express some concerns regarding our reserves. And even as we came out of the recession, the fact that we were not keeping pace with the growth in expenditures in terms of what we were doing with reserves. There's always a fine line between what you need for today and where you need to position yourselves for the future. People always call that reserve a rainy day fund. I'm always a little nervous about that. I think it is appropriate, especially in down times, to use the reserve, but only for one-time expenses and to help us maybe with some immediate needs during a recessionary period or a downturn. But you don't want to rely on that, because if you do, let's say we take $1 million out one year, then we're $1 million in the hole the following year if you are funding ongoing operations with that dollar amount.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
So Bob, I know you don't have these numbers in front of you, but you sent them to me this morning and asked to clear up some confusion about animal control.
Yes.
So there's several people in our community that are saying that we are reducing animal control budget by $250,000. In fact, it's just opposite of that. And in 2019, we budgeted $2,111,000. We actually ended up spending $2,346,000, and you've budgeted for 2020 $2,417,000.
That's correct.
So I just wanted to put that out there so people fully understood the facts instead of the propaganda. And I don't know why people are sharing that we have reduced the animal control budget, but I appreciate you doing the research on that. Sure. and sharing the actual numbers with us. Anything, I don't know that there's anything else we need to add to that, but seeing no other questions, we'll go out to the public at this point. Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to address the council on this agenda item?
I'm Donna Worth. I'm in zip code 67214. Let me just say that I'm disappointed that this public hearing is held at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning when most people can't come. However, I appreciate me being able to come. But please open this up to the public. People need to get involved, even though they're not nerds like me who like looking at the hundreds and hundreds of pages of the budget that reside on the website. They need to know what's happening in the community. And I am one of the people concerned about animal control, because I did review the proposed budget last August, where there was a $250,000 proposed shrinkage in the budget for 2019 for animal control. Now, I have looked at the files, and yes, the actual shrinkage that is being approved now for 2019, I'm assuming because of the surplus, is only $50,000. But there's an additional $50,000 scheduled for 2020, also 2021, if the proposal goes through. Now, what I can say is that since several years ago, Animal Control and the Animal Shelter requested $300,000 increase in order to do their job properly, I'm here to say that it appears that they're chronically underfunded. For those of us who constantly try to find fosters and adopters for these animals, we are seeing more and more animals on the euthanasia list listed for killing for lack of resources. So I don't care what you say about $250,000. It was a part of the proposal in August 2018. I still have a copy of those files on my computer. But I do commend you for changing that for the rest of the year so that the amount will be $50,000. But that is still inadequate when an organization requested $300,000 several years ago to do their job properly. This is a matter of life and death for the animals. And whether you're an animal lover or not, this is a service that our city needs to provide. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Other speakers?
Mayor and Council, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dale Goter. I live at 2625 West Cornelison. Before you start the clock, Mayor, I'd like to preface my remarks just to clarify something. What I'm going to deliver here right now is not advertising. This is editorial content. There seems to be some confusion in the staff as to what advertising is. Just want to make that clear so I don't get arrested walking out here that I'm doing something inappropriate. Of course, this relates to the incident Friday at Clapp Park, which you read about what we termed First Amendment violations, which I take very seriously as a lifetime journalist, and I think some other folks do too. It's ironic that I could carry a loaded machine gun onto the Clapp parking lot, but this little item just struck fear in the hearts of the staff and caused it to be confiscated. Okay, that aside, we're here to talk about golf. Indulge me a written statement I prepared. I'd like to, it takes about 5 minutes if you'll give me that amount of time. The golf division has systemic problems that are pulling it into a death spiral. The evidence of the dysfunction first emerged when the city manager tried to sell McDonald Park. That fell through. The next step was to close Clapp Park, which you've done, and then the next step was the announcement that 3 golf courses will be closed for 2 months this winter, and the staff furloughed because of financial problems. Before I go any further, I wanted to ask one question of the manager that was asked of me. There's a rumor going around that a developer made an offer to purchase Clapp Park in the last few weeks. Is that true? Did you entertain such an offer?
No, we did not. I'm Mayor, if I can.
So, Dale, you're not going to get all this in your 5 minutes, but
Well, you can, the police chief's back there. I guess you can arrest me.
Really?
my goodness, Dale.
Okay, so that answer there is there was no inquiry. Okay, want that to be a matter of record. All right, there's 2 points that I would like to raise regarding the golf fund. One relates to the operating model that we're using, and the second relates to Auburn Hills and the debt. The current business model for this enterprise fund is a joke. I mean, the biggest problem is that you're spending $250,000 to $300,000 on the 11th floor for administrative oversight of the golf division. You can't afford that. At the same time, you've got PGA pros and assistant pros at every golf course, which is about $125,000 a year for each of those courses. Each of those pros is very competent in their own rights, but are not given the opportunity to run those golf courses or to make the decisions that are vested upstairs. But the problem is the manager and the parks director, fine individuals, but they're really not qualified to run a commercial enterprise like this. So what we'd like you to consider is that your primary mission of a municipal golf system is to provide golf opportunities for golfers. It's not to provide salaries for staff. We're kind of backwards here. I'd like to think that you would start thinking about that priority mission first. Apparently, that's not the case right now. That $300,000, to cover that requires 13,600 rounds of golf to be played before you ever get to revenue to support the golf courses. So our suggestion has been from the beginning that you need help. And we suggested that the National Golf Foundation would be a great resource to bring in, to look at our system, and make recommendations about how you can run this system, starting with that fact that you've got 5 courses, and then identify the minimal operating model that you can do to provide golfing opportunities for golfers, not jobs for staffs. You'd like to build it as big as you can, but you can't afford what you're doing now. This has been the case for the last 2 or 3 years, going back more than that, and every year the same model's brought forward without any effort to look at a different model. The second item I wanted to talk about was that the $5 million item that's in the budget as a liability against the golf fund to pay for Auburn Hills. That $5 million was incurred that ran over the original estimate. The city paid it with general fund money. It's paid off. It's, as you may call it, a paper money debt. It's really not real. But the truth is that that money was paid by taxpayers from across the city. Everybody paid that $5 million. When it came to Clapp, you didn't have the money to pay it off, and so you closed the course. We think that's somewhat discriminatory, and we'd like you to look at that. So I won't go over my time. Again,
So a couple of things that.
just
that-
one last point. We'd like the council to intervene here. You haven't
Okay.
done that in the past 2 years. You've trusted the management to come forward with their model, and that's fine, that's what you do. But at this point, it doesn't work, and you can't afford it.
So a couple of things I want to clear up. We have looked at other models. In fact, we tried to look at privatizing our golf courses a few years back, and you lobbied against that, Dale. You were one of them lobbying against that privatization of our golf courses.
That's inaccurate, Mayor. I didn't have no say in that matter at all.
All right. Does anyone else have questions for Dale? I do want the manager to clear up some misconceptions on the Auburn debt. So,
May I stay
any
here
other,
and respond?
any other
Yes, sir?
questions? No, I don't think we have any other questions of you, Dale.
Okay.
So Bob, one of the misconceptions is the Auburn debt is causing financial heartburn for CLAP. Can you explain what that means in terms of financial hardship, if any, for CLAP?
Again, we need to look at it as a system-wide expense in terms of making a debt service payment. 2016, I think, was the last time the system was able to make a debt service payment, and I can't remember if that was a full payment or partial at that time. 17, 18, and 19 will not be able to make any debt service payment. And in fact, I believe the council wants to have a discussion about that issue going forward, and whether or not it's realistic to carry that as an ongoing liability for the golf system. But the system the number of rounds continues to decline in our system. That was the reason we brought forward the recommendation to close CLAP, because it was the worst performing course. We are in really good company. This is playing out all around the country. In fact, the city of Austin just went through this exact same exercise in closing a course because of the continuous decline in popularity of golf. Doesn't mean that there aren't some things that can be done strategically to position ourselves better. The other thing is they consistently talk about the administrative charges to the golf fund. Golf fund is an enterprise fund. All of our enterprise funds pay support expenses to the general fund. If you don't do that, then the general fund is subsidizing the operations of golf. And I know that's a policy issue, but I just want to point that out, that we are consistent in how we handle all of our enterprise funds. So those are, I think, two of the biggest issues that were raised. I do not disagree that we need to be looking at some alternatives as we go forward in 2019, because again, we cannot continue as our operation currently exists.
Councilmember Clayco.
Thank you. I think maybe Director Houtman can answer this. When Brayburn Golf Course closed, did we see an uptick in our rounds played at our golf courses, at the city golf courses?
Mayor, Council, Parks and Recreation Director Troy Houtman. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we've had consistent decline in all of our golf courses in regards to amount of play. There's only a certain amount of golfers that play, and you typically would want to see them, if we close a golf course, that they would see an increase in some of the other golf courses, but we are not. We are actually seeing a steady decline on a regular basis for the past 4 years, and where we should be at a whole lot more, maybe 250,000 rounds. This past year, we were under 135,000 rounds, and this year we're projected to be even less than that.
Thank you.
Bob, one other misconception that I think is worth clearing up. I don't believe that we ever put McDonald Golf Course up for sale. I think we were just responding to someone that made an offer.
Right, and then we opened it up for any other proposals. We received one, didn't find that acceptable, so we moved forward.
But that wasn't our intent to put McDonald Golf Course up for sale. That just came to us.
Right, we did not. We were not proactive in terms of soliciting proposals.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I do want to say that one of the most articulate, thoughtful arguments I've heard regarding the need to do something different with golf courses came from Jack Nicklaus, who talks about the future of golf and where the sport is going. And if you look at what he and his company are doing, most of the courses they are building today are outside the United States. And I think he expresses the need for us to change the approach to golf in order to try to keep it somewhat relevant. But that has a lot to do with rule changes and even repurposing courses.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, any other speakers? Going once? I thought for sure that Don Sherman would want to come up here. Just double checking. You didn't think you can get by without me calling you out, did you? We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Other discussion? Councilmember Claycomb.
Mayor, I want to just respond to one thing about holding meetings at 9 a.m. in the morning. So people had the opportunity at other times to comment on the budget, and I just want to remind folks of that. So each of our DABs saw that. Those are night meetings. We had the social media town hall, which it was during the day, but you could respond or ask questions outside of that time. And we had the budget simulator. So I think what we have, and all of us, I know every one of the council members takes comments from people, email, phone calls, and responds to budget questions. So I understand that not everybody can make a 9 a.m. meeting, but I at least, and I think my other council members have been open to all input from the public on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember Tuttle?
Mr. Layton, I just wanted to confirm, when we did the budget simulator and 1,400 people were able to provide feedback, was golf the item that was the most likely to be cut, wasn't it? Am I correct?
Councilmember, yes, that is correct. Golf was at the bottom of the list in the simulator as well as in social media at Town Hall.
Thank you.
There is an item that I want to bring up, and that's what we announced a couple of weeks ago, that we were shifting into a tort fund. And we were looking at putting $2.5 million into a tort fund, and I would like to suggest that we do something dramatically different. I would like to see us only put $1.5 million in that tort fund and shift $1 million over immediately to start the phase 2 of the hiring of additional police officers from the WSU study that we had agreed to follow a couple of years ago. And I know we've gotten through phase 1, and so phase 2 needs to start their implementation process now. And I think that we have the resources to start doing that, and then would encourage us to look at some other shifting of some funds so that we could fund the rest of those phase 2 officers by 2020.
Mayor, I'm prepared to talk about that today if you'd like.
Sure.
I know that you expressed that concern to me after the last public discussion after I released the budget, and I've heard from several other council members regarding that issue as well, and at least to see if we couldn't put together a plan that would allow, to make it feasible to fund the second phase of the police staffing plan. So let me remind you that we started the implementation of the staffing plan in 2017. Since that time, there are several things that have happened, really since the time the study was first performed. We've centralized all of our community response teams. We've seen some changes in crime stats, and the thing that's really important is that we have a better handle on our crime patterns as a result of analytical work that's being done under Chief Ramsey's guidance. And then we're seeing, because I guess the downside to our success in downtown is we're seeing a lot more activity, right? And we're seeing a lot more residents, and it's starting to feel in some ways more like a residential neighborhood with all of the needs of such a neighborhood. As a result of that, the department has revisited the police staffing study. The second phase of the plan of the study was had a recommendation to create a special operations bureau. And you'll see under the bullet point there were a number of operations that would have been rolled into that Special Operations Bureau. Because of the trends that I talked about in the previous slide, the department's come back and made a suggestion that instead of creating a Special Operations Bureau, that the second phase should be used to create a central bureau. And so that would be our 5th bureau in the community, and it would be staffed with 18 additional positions. The rest of the recommendations had to do primarily with investigation, and the department still feels comfortable that those 8 positions should be added to investigation. And so in response to the discussions I've had with you over the past week or so, what we are recommending, or at least offering for you as an option, is that if you want to move forward in 2019 towards implementation, it'll take us a period of time to recruit and to start the training effort. But if you take that $1 million that the mayor's talking about and reduce the transfer to tort liability, we would be able to start the training class this year for 10 officers, and then we'd also be able to purchase all the equipment that's necessary for phase 2. And then in 2020, we'd be able to bring on the remaining 16 positions, and to fund that, it comes with a shift in expenditures out of the operating budget. I'll talk about that in just a second. So here's how that would look financially. Right now you have $3 million in the general fund budgeted for roadway maintenance. Sales tax proceeds to support road projects in the CIP have exceeded our expectations or our estimates, and to the point where I think we have some additional capacity in the sales tax fund in the CIP to be able to pay all of our road maintenance expenses. Now, we may have to do a little more in debt financing, hope that we would still have good sales tax receipts going forward, and we could stay in our cash basis as much as we have to date. But anyway, I think it's safe to say that we can shift all of those expenses to the CIP, so you wouldn't lose any ground. We'd be still at $134 million over a 10-year period in street maintenance. You'd have the one-time transfer in 2019, and that would free up dollars then to be able to go through the phase 2 recommendations as they've come from the chief and his staff now. I think that's all I have in terms of that option. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Chief Ramsey's here if you have any questions regarding the Central Bureau and the rationale for that.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Bob, just one question. How would shifting the funding for road maintenance to the CIP from the general fund impact timeliness of those projects? Will it?
Should have no impact whatsoever.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Shouldn't we put Chief Ramsey up here
just for the fun of it? Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that, and certainly the very thoughtful analysis of how we can shift resources. And the reality is, as all of us up here know, and it's been consistent through the last several retreats we've had, it's been consistent, and all of the inputs from the community. Public safety is number one. And as we continue to focus on public safety, certainly one of the things that's critically important is making sure that we have the resources. And so this will do that. I think that it addresses a number of concerns that we have right now. And I hope the public understands that it's not just what you see in terms of additional police officers, but we're doing some pretty innovative things with trying to keep this community safe that includes some the ICT, the integrated care team that we think is going to make a difference. It's the new CSOs that's going to respond to traffic accidents. And it's the Department of Justice that's going to come in for 3 years and totally change the way that we address major crimes in this city. So appreciate the opportunity to get phase 2 funded, and I can guarantee it's going to be important to the community. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to comment that I think this is a reasonable plan to address the next phase of the police staffing study. I know when that first came out, there was a lot to it, and it was tough to bite off all at once. We also wanted to make sure that there were measurable results with that first phase before we started phase 2, and that we could fund it responsibly. And I understand the need to have the money in the tort fund, but I'm comfortable with where we're at with that, and being able to help the core, which we know that that's putting stress on the other substations, including District 4 down south, who I believe is the primary responsibility for the core. Having that central bureau, I think, would be a great asset for a growing downtown. So being able to do this responsibly, and again, making sure that we're getting the results that we need, whether it's the traffic unit, the CSOs, et cetera. This is a good idea, and I'll be proud to support it.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one thing, is there a way we could kind of compare where that staffing study, like it was presented to the public, just an update, just to get the information out in kind of a document form?
Yes, we can do that. There are a few changes. We've moved a few things from phase 3 into phase 2, and we've pushed back the CSOs that were the second phase of CSOs into phase 3. But we'll go ahead and give you a chart that shows the differences between the second and as originally proposed and as being recommended now.
Awesome, thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Well, I do want to express my support for the changes as well. I think it's important, not only because it keeps the rest of our officers safe and the community safe, but knowing that the technology changes that are being made and the investment in technology is just going to make those 10 officers even more effective in the jobs that they're doing. I know last year we had quite a spike in crime. I think that's well documented, but this year our numbers are dramatically down from where they were. That's an attest to how great our police officers are doing, but also because of the technology that's being invested. And so our community is becoming more safe, and I think this step is a step in that continuing direction.
All we need to do today is receive and file comments.
Yes, that's correct. And also, if I have general direction, we'll make sure this is reflected in the final public hearing next week.
So I'm hearing that that's the direction that we want to go in terms of making sure that we're funding our police officers. So prepare the final budget with that in mind. Any other questions, concerns? Move that we receive and file today's comments. Councilmember Claycomb.
I have one more comment. And this is back to the golf fund. Okay. We talked today about forgiving that debt to the Golf Enterprise Fund, and I wonder if we could reflect that in the 2020 budget also, if there's enough support for that. As the manager said, the golf fund is not paid in to that, has not made a payment since 2016. I think we ought to forgive that debt and give the Golf Enterprise Fund the best chance that we can to be successful with some of the changes that we're also looking at. So.
Happy to include that in the comments today, but the reality is the debt that exists today is not impacting the golf courses as we know in the budget.
That is correct. That is correct.
So I don't want to confuse people and think that all of a sudden it's going to change the Golf Enterprise Fund, because the golf debt has zero impact on the budget.
Exactly. And we could take it up at a different time, Mayor, if you'd rather do that.
I think it'd be more appropriate later so we can
do that.
discuss that, because I don't want to confuse people and make them think that all of a sudden we're going to heal the Golf Enterprise Fund by debt relief that doesn't impact them.
Let's take it up at a different time then.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? But I appreciate the conversation. No other discussion. Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Expansion of the Board of Plumbers and Gas Fitters from 7 to 9 members by amending Section 1, Charter Ordinance 219.
Mayor's council members, good morning. Chris Labrum, MABCD. Our plumbing boards are established by a state statute via charter ordinance. Our charter ordinance is number 219. This would repeal and replace Section 1 of that ordinance by changing the makeup of the plumbing board, and again, commonly referred to as the expansion of the plumbing board. So officially titled the Board of Appeals of Plumbers and Gas Fitters, this board was created at the time of that MABCD was created, circa 2013, came into effect with a total of 7 members. Obviously, as with all of our boards, there's a challenge in ensuring that we represent a very broad industry. You'll see as we get to the discussion of positions that of a board of 7 members, we actually have 3 plumbers. So that is a challenge with this board and something that we've looked to overcome. We also have a hard-to-fill position in this case, our mechanical engineer. It's been hard to not only fill that, but keep those individuals on the board. This began with a need for balance and a look for balance at that. Again, we apply this across all of our boards. In this specific instance, we do have some industry division in which the views between staff and our various organizations on what that balance means have differed in this case. And then we also have the issue of code, specifically the International Plumbing Code versus the Uniform Plumbing Code. International code is allowed for use in the county, not in the city. So that has been a point of great discussion amongst the industry. Current makeup of the board, as you see here, again, noting that we have 2 master plumbers and a journeyman plumber, and then again, in an effort to create the remaining diversity in the industry, the other positions there mean that we do not have a majority made up of plumbers. Also want to note here that these positions as listed on the slide are as they are currently listed in our ordinance. Very generic. This is the way those positions are listed on all of our advisory boards, and then it has been between staff and the board to find the level of diversity, the level of inclusion of the various components of the industries in order to make up a balanced board and properly represent all areas. Also important to note as we move into the proposal, hit the right button there, that this being a repeal and replace of Section 1 would discontinue the current board and require an appointment of a new board. All members on the board who are currently on the board would be eligible for positions, but they will not automatically roll to those positions. We will have to appoint a new board. So the proposal before you this morning would change that to add 1 mechanical contractor whose experience and training is specific to but not limited to mechanical contracting, 1 master plumber whose experience and training is specific to but not limited to new residential plumbing, 1 master lawn sprinkler whose experience and training is specific to but not limited to lawn sprinkler systems, 1 master plumber whose experience and training is specific to but not limited to service and repair plumbing, 1 licensed professional engineer whose experience and training is specific to but not limited to the design of mechanical systems, 1 master plumber whose experience and training is specific to but not limited to industrial and commercial plumbing, 1 master plumber whose primary profession involves the installation of plumbing and plumbing systems, 1 journeyman plumber whose primary profession involves the installation of plumbing and plumbing systems, and 1 public at-large member. And that would be a joint appointment of both city and county. So unique to that is, of course, that increased level of definition for those positions that would require, by definition, not just by board and staff work, a diversity and coverage of the industry components. This has been a long time in work as staff, and to include legal counsel, has been very concerned about expanding and further defining those positions and what that could mean to the board. For example, a contractor who does both components of work in the industry, if in a given year, now are we going to be talking at the board as to how many permits in one area versus another area they've pulled if there's a conflict between board members. So there's been, again, much discussion and look at that. This actually began based on the previously mentioned debate and some of what we've obviously termed as division, begin with some very, very specific definitions of the board positions, the original 7, which we just did not think we could legally back up. Many of staff's initial proposals have been to rearrange the board members as they currently were constituted, to put another plumber on the board, potentially to combine the mechanical contractor, the mechanical engineer. We do, however, also see a lot of value in having both of those positions on the board. So at this point, all of our advisory boards have evaluated this as it applies to them. They have requested that they be allowed to remain. We do see value and have agreed that it makes sense to go forward with this in the plumbing board, see how this may in the future apply to the way we manage boards. And again, we do see value to all of the positions that would be in place with this. So to the stakeholder support that I've mentioned, I know I've got some alphabet soup up there, but the International Association of Plumbers and Mechanical Officials, Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors of Kansas, and of course the local 441 plumbers and pipe fitters. They were very involved in the current definitions that you see. All of the organizations were, and all fully support what you see in front of you today, to the best of my knowledge. The Plumbers Association of Central Kansas has been involved with this as well. They support with hesitation. They are in support of the board members, everything that I've described as far as the value that would come with that. They do see concern in that the definitions being slightly more specific, but still not any more than they are. Does not require field experience. It doesn't require someone to be currently working in the field, in the industry. It still kind of leaves that open to it's still to the board and staff to determine relevance of those members in the industry. So I guess for lack of a better term, they kind of felt we went halfway, and they are concerned about that. They're not the only ones. The PAC has also expressed that they felt, since their view specific to the code is somewhat against the other organizations at times, they felt they were very much dismissed by the board members and the other organizations when they brought inputs to the table. So I think it's fair that we put that out there. Also, in discussions with WABA, the industry board has again stated that they will remain neutral. They will support staff's recommendation based on what I just explained. They have shared some of those same concerns that I just described that the PAC has. They have also expressed concern over the ability to reach balance and what the definition, whose definition that would be. They're very concerned about the conflict in the industry. They feel that a lot of this is tied to the code discussion, and WABA specifically supports maintaining the ability for plumbers in this area to use the international code. So it is with that they, again, have not expressed support of this, but have stated that they understand our need to move forward and see the value in these positions and the value, again, of testing this concept for our advisory boards. Mr. Gallion did call me and give me that verbally again yesterday. He's traveling from Topeka, so I do not think he was going to be able to make it in time today. But we have members of some of the other organizations in the audience, and I certainly welcome any of them to correct anything that I have stated there if needed. So I think that fairly well covers the staff evaluation and the support of that. It is, in the end of that, our recommendation that the City Council place on first reading the ordinance to amend Section 1, Charter Ordinance 219, and authorize the necessary signatures. I'll gladly stand for questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Fry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chris, has this already been to the county? Because they have to make this change as well, correct?
That is correct. It has not, Councilmember. Since it is a charter ordinance on the city, it does not require a charter ordinance on the county. That will require a 60-day publishing period. So the county requested that we begin with the city.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And I spoke with our friends at the county, and they did want us to address this first. And so that's what we're doing today. Councilmember Clendenin?
Thanks for the presentation today.
Is there in any of these requirements, is there a requirement for someone placed on that board to be or not to be part of a union?
There is not. That was discussed, council member, and that we specifically avoided, that's where I believe all groups agreed to avoid putting that language in any board membership.
Well, there was, actually, I've heard concerns on both sides. People that do not want it to be weighted one way and people that do want it to be weighted another way. It's kind of interesting how all over the board people are in this industry about how this board needs to be formed. I'm also understanding that right now the board is having a problem even getting a quorum many times. Is there anything built in to try to help alleviate that? Like if a member misses 2 or 3 meetings, that they can be replaced to try to alleviate that problem?
We do have that, council member, and it has come into play. We have a few members who had missed meetings. We have them now attending again. We have had a few members actually leave the board recently. The board requested that they wait until this proposal was voted upon before trying to replace 2 vacant positions we currently have. And it is correct that they have struggled, especially in the last probably year, to reach quorum often at their meetings. We have a lot of plumbers who are involved. I think that expanding this with that both new positions are plumbers' positions, I believe that will help actually to do that. And I am very happy to report that this debate has generated some interest from a few of the mechanical engineering firms to put someone on the board. So it has helped us make progress, definitely in that regard.
And I guess the other question I have is basically half are appointed by the county, half by the city, generally. Who makes those appointments? Will it be the mayor and the chair? The mayor of the city and the chair of the Central County Board of Commissioners?
So the mayor in this case, the BOCC votes as a body on the county side.
I see. Okay, thank you.
They come forth to the BOCC as a resolution, and each is presented and voted upon.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
And I think we still have to ratify ours. This isn't one of those that we just appoint without ratification, is it?
My understanding is that correct? Is that is correct, Mr. Mayor? That they would be ratified by the council.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? I guess, Chris, you didn't inspire them to come up and speak. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any discussion? I know the person that brought this to us couldn't be here today, and Ray made, I think, the rounds with all of us, didn't he? And talked about his rationale, and I haven't heard much pushback, so I'm going to move that the council place this on first reading, the ordinance to amend Section 1, Charter Ordinance 219, and authorize the necessary signatures to move the expansion of the plumbing board from 7 to 9 members.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Aesthetic design concept to 17th Street, Broadway to I-135.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is the request for approval of aesthetic design enhancements to 17th Street from Broadway to I-135. The capital improvement program includes multiple projects recommended for special consideration of aesthetic enhancements by the Design Council, including this project. The Design Council formally approved what you will see today at their June 24th, 2019 meeting. Before I go any farther, I want to introduce a couple of people here with me. Ella Backus is our artist for this project. She is here. MKC Engineering, our design consultant, is here. In case you have any questions above and beyond my purview as an engineer, you are welcome, and I can bring them up to answer specific questions, but hopefully we can make it through here. The project limits extend from Broadway on the west. The project will include rebuilding that intersection to I-135 on the east. The design concept previously approved by the council includes 3 lanes, on-street bike lanes, pedestrian facilities, and drainage improvements. This is a mostly industrial area, but the project does abut McAdams Park, which is definitely our focus for the proposed aesthetic enhancements. With your approval of the specific aesthetics and art design concept today, the project will be ready to move to construction late 2019. Once all necessary right-of-way and railroad agreements are in place, which we are currently working on right now. So I mentioned again, you can see an overview here of McAdams Park. The area in red is where our focus was for the improvements, specifically adjacent to the baseball fields where League 42 plays. That's a critical part of what we did in looking through this and the recommendations from the artist. Just to dial in on that a little bit more, our focus is on the crosswalk, the long median that you see there with the 2 baseballs with the 42s in them, and then the baseball diamond-shaped plaza area, kind of towards the center left, center bottom, is where we are recommending most of the improvements be done. These drawings, I thought this was some kind of a neat deal to share. Ella had reached out to students at Leovicher and had them provide some ideas of what they might like to see. And so you can see some kind of concept drawings. One of them that you'll see here in a minute that we really want to capitalize on. The one on the left shows a baseball bat for the crosswalk, which she thought was a good idea. We think it is too, and I'll show you what that looks like or could look like. Top right shows some baseballs within the median, and then the bottom right kind of shows a combination of both. This was a good inspiration. It was a good place to start for her, and it was good for us to see what the students had in mind. So looking at this from an overview, this is looking back to 135. You can see in the background that long median I mentioned, and then you can see that crosswalk there with the baseball bat. Again, capitalizing on being adjacent to the fields. The League 42 is really the biggest thing that this all centers around, and we think we can make that work. The plaza area over to the right, you can see the 42 on top of the access structure. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then there's a proposed statue there of Jackie Robinson also. One thing I wanted to mention too before I got away from that, this is not part of the aesthetic enhancements, but if you happen to notice the parking on the right side there of the picture, which is the south side of 17th Street, it shows back-end diagonal parking. This is something that we've looked at for some time as a place to try across the city, especially where we have on-street bike lanes behind the parking. It's an inherent safety issue when you're backing out of diagonal parking of being able to see those on bikes. This looks like a good place to give it a try. There's not a lot of parking spots, but they will be used quite often, especially during baseball season. So our goal is to give that a shot, just in case you happen to notice those vehicles backed in there. This is a different angle looking from 135 to the west. You can see the baseball there at the end of the median. We would provide landscaping within that median, and then the park is to the left. As you're on the north side of 17th looking to the south, this is what that crosswalk looks like. I think we can find a way. We have had some issues with brick crosswalks across the city that we're trying to remedy now. But I think we can find a way from a constructability standpoint to provide something there that would give that effect, but still provide long-term durability and be able to operate and maintain into the future. And then you can see across the street, looking at the plaza area, I'll show you up a little bit closer. So Park and League 42 are working on a grant to get a statue of Jackie Robinson. This is actually out of McAdams Park right now, showing what that statue would look like and would be the focal point of this plaza area. You can see that right in the center where that statue would go. The accessory and shade structures in the background would also have panels that would also honor Jackie Robinson. You can see the landscaping, seating areas, and plaza areas. And then the last picture I wanted to show you was these access and shade structures. And what you can see there is this would be built so that at a certain time of the day, the sun casting a shadow through that structure, you would see that 42 shadow on the plaza area behind the statue there just to the left. The existing budget of $9.6 million was approved by the council back in March of 2019. As we work through these projects with the design council, part of that is a recommended budget consideration specifically for aesthetic enhancements above and beyond what's already been put into the project. That was recommended at $270,000. That is included in that budget that was approved by the council in March. With that, staff recommends City Council approve the aesthetic design concept, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions at this point? I would encourage you to grab those young students and make sure they can intern with our marketing department. And I think that's outstanding input that they provided. We'll reach out to the audience. Is there anyone that would like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Johnson, I'm guessing you like this.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Gary and all the staff, I just want to say thank you. I know when we first talked about this, there was some struggles to get some of this work done, but this looks amazing. And working with Ella and the students, what I love most about this is their actual design drawings. We see that in reality, and those students can say that they had a part in the development of McAdams, and Lee Overture's right there as well. So I am really excited about this. I've loved the concepts. This looks even better than what I saw last time, so thank you for that. It's a real enhancement to the park. I'm thankful for Bob Lutz and everything he's doing with League 42, and again, it just continues to improve the park, and especially the northern part of McAdams. So just wanted to express my thanks to you all for the hard work you've done. Please let the students know as well, and maybe when this is done, we can invite them out as a ribbon cutting or dedication to it.
Are you ready to make a motion?
All right, yeah, it's District 1 and 6, so. All right, I'll take it.
We'll let you both do it.
All right, thanks, Mayor. I would move that we take the staff recommended action and approve the aesthetic design concept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote.
Vice Mayor, would you cast your vote, please?
Yeah, I did. It's not.
That's by design.
Are you voting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Any appointments? Councilmember Fry?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. After a long, exhaustive search, I finally have a person for Animal Control Advisory Board. This young woman participated in the Civic Engagement Academy that just graduated, and she decided she wanted to take it to the next step, so I'm happy to appoint Elaine Stephen to the Animal Control Advisory Board.
Okay. Any other appointments needed? I move that we accept the appointments as nominated.
Second.
Motion and a second. Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. And any other comments today?
Go vote.
Go vote. Absolutely.
Often.
Free rides from transit.
Free rides from transit today if you need transportation to go vote. All right. I move that we adjourn today's council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and second to adjourn. Cast your vote. The motion passes unanimously. You know, that was all unanimous votes today. We're going to get criticized.